Okay, people. So I am very pleased to be joined today by Robert Shupe. Is that
Yep,
how you?
you
Splendid.
got it.
Yes. Robert, thank you so much for your time today. Yeah, it's great. It's great because AJ recommended you, so I knew it was gonna, you know, your film was gonna be good, and this should be a great conversation. So I'm glad you had the time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to meet you and talk with you here.
Hey, no worries at all, man. No worries at all. Well, you have a new film coming, right? So
Certainly do.
Handshake.
Yep.
Yeah. That's it. And I think the interesting thing, and I might be wrong because IMBD is not always the most reliable fonts of information, but this is so Handshake is your second feature, and you
Yeah.
actually started off with a feature and then went shorts, which is usually people do it the other way around.
Yeah. Well, I definitely did a number of shorts before that first feature film.
Right.
They maybe aren't listed on IMDb. But yeah, basically, I went to film school, many years ago. But yeah, in film school, I made a number of short films. I wrote some scripts. And then, kind of shortly after film school, I was able to sort of save up enough money to make a first very low budget feature film. That was called Damn Yankee Day. That was shot like 2004, 2005. Um, yeah, like I said, very low budget. It did come out kind of when streaming VOD was in its infancy. It was
Mm.
available for a while on Amazon. I don't know if it's actually, I think it recently, for distribution reasons, I don't think it's on there currently anymore. But anyway, yeah, I did that first feature. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, I did do a few short films after that. Yeah, and then I just did this feature film, Handshake. Um, yeah, I wrote that script back in like 2012. So it
Oh.
was kind of a while ago, and then was kind of working on it for a few years off and on, and then finally had the chance to shoot it in 2019. So we shot it in 2019, and then COVID happened. We all know about that, and that kind of slowed things down. But I may also just have been using that as an excuse for why I was kind of procrastinating or going as slow as I was. But yeah, I finally finished it in like 2022, and then the last year has kind of been trying to get it into film festivals and stuff. So it's nice for it to finally be coming out here. So
Mm. Yeah. So it was nearly 20 years between the first and second film, right? So was there any particular reason for the break and just concentrating on the short films? Was it, trying to get those finances together or a time constraint thing?
yeah, a lot of it is finances. A lot of it is just kind of energy too. The first feature that I did kind of took a lot of time and effort and energy and bandwidth. And it was almost like I needed a lot of time to just recover from that experience. And again, I'm sort of operating at a very low budget, independent, kind of self financed level. I don't really have financiers backing me. I still haven't figured that out yet, how to get people to actually invest in personal projects. But so that's kind of a big reason. And so doing like a feature length film at a small level, um, yeah, in terms of saving money and preparing and wanting to do it right, just takes time. But there was, this particular script I knew could be done kind of at that level, at that kind of low budget level. Um, so That's kind of the main reason I would say why there was such a gap. I mean, I would love to be able to have to be making like a feature film a year every 2 years or something, but I'm not at that. I don't have that connection yet. If I
Mm.
ever will, we'll see. But
Yeah. No, I think what you just said there is very interesting and doesn't always get talked about. You make a film and then there's like the burnout, right?
Mhm.
What did that feel like and how ready for it were you?
How ready was I for making this next the
No, no,
how ready?
like experience that burnout. Like, had anyone talked about it to you, or did it just suddenly come and you're like, "Yo, what the fuck is happening here?"
Yeah, I mean, you kind of know, and again, like when you make a short film, you kind of experience that on a much smaller level. Any kind of film that you do, obviously it's very taxing, and depending on again how involved you are, if you're just directing, if you're writing and directing, if you're producing, if you're also acting, depending on how many hats you're wearing, that can definitely add to the burden and also the resultant burnout. Um, but I think short films do kind of prepare you for that. But I think until you kind of do a feature film, you kind of don't really know. And with my first feature film, we shot it. We kind of had to split up the shooting. We shot most of it in 2004, but then there was some stuff we didn't get, and so then we kind of had to wait. Like I had to wait like another year, basically, to
Mm,
get the equipment. It was mostly because of equipment, because this was back. We were actually shooting on film, 35
right.
millimeter black and white, and yeah, access to that camera package, that was kind of an issue at that time. So there was a whole year before I could sort of shoot the rest of the stuff. And then, um, there's the editing process. And I was young enough at that time where I think a lot of people want to, there's the shooting process, which is taxing, and then the editing. And you kind of, and I experienced this with that first feature where it was like, I kind of just hit a point where it was just like, I just want this to be done. Like, let's just
Mm,
get it out of there. And I didn't really spend the time on like sound design and the sound mix and like music and stuff like that. Like, I just kind of like accelerated that, or kind of just blew off certain aspects of that if I had taken more time during those like post-production processes, I think it would have turned out better. So that's kind of one thing I learned from that first one that I took into this one, was like, I really want to like do this right and really take the time, even though I'm doing things on a budget and sometimes people aren't always available to, people aren't working on your schedule a lot of the time. But it was definitely something that I learned and that I really kind of applied to this film, was just like, no, let's like really explore all the sound design options and try things. And so yeah, but that made things longer, and now I'm going to be even more burnt out because I took longer, but I wanted to do it right. And but yeah,
mm.
burnout. I think you really kind of don't, maybe, people can tell you about it, but until you actually do it, go through the process, you kind of just have to go through it in order to know what it's like.
Yeah, I think that's very true. That's very true. With the sound design and all of that kind of stuff, like how much knowledge did you have on those things? Or was that part of the reason to kind of as well kind of speed it up because it's having to do all that reading and research into new topics and things that aren't maybe your forte?
Um, well, I've actually been working for the last like 7 or 8 years. I've been working as an editor, like a freelance editor. So I deal with doing sound design on whatever I'm working on kind of all the time. So a lot of that stuff I've improved a lot. Again, since the first feature that I did, I've kind of gotten more into like editing. So I'm pretty used to, I'm pretty, um, I guess, familiar with just kind of overall sound design and how much it really um, affects and really elevates a film. Even though a lot of the stuff that I do is as a career, as a freelance editor, is not necessarily even a lot of it narrative. A lot of it's just like, short little things. But like sound
Mm.
design goes a long way, and a lot of casual viewers probably wouldn't know um, as they're watching a movie. But um, I've definitely become a lot more familiar in the last few years with all the post-production phases where, um, I feel like I'm pretty versed in things, but then, working with a sound designer and a sound mixer, like it's also kind of fun to try things, or I'll kind of throw in like a rough idea and they'll make it way better, or they'll come up with, you know, solutions that are way better than anything I could. So
Mm.
it's also, a fun part of the process as well.
Yeah, like gaining all of these new skills and all this new knowledge, like how much of an impact do you think that had on your, you know, belief and self-confidence going into Handshake?
It definitely helped for sure. I think, again, having done enough short films in the previous feature film, and like I said, kind of learning what I learned from that first feature, I definitely felt pretty confident making this film. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think all that kind of accumulated experience from personal projects and stuff that I, do for a living definitely it made certain things, I think, a lot. But I think it's more just about knowing what's realistic and what's not. I think that's a
Mm.
big thing. Like, a lot of maybe first time filmmakers wouldn't know what's feasible. They may have like a big grand idea, but not know what it takes, what they're asking for, what you're asking people to do. Um, so not that I still don't ask unreasonable things of people. I think that's kind of part of like, that's kind of what a director's job is in a lot of ways, is like you just have to ask unreasonable things of people. And then sometimes you ask for too much and they tell you, hey, that's too much. And you go, all right, but yeah.
Okay. Now, the script was written in 2012.
Hmm.
Where did the idea come from? Right, how did you stumble upon this story?
It sort of originated as almost like two separate ideas that kind of ended up combining in my head. The basic setup I'd had in mind for a while, which is, um, I sort of describe, it's almost like I would say it's almost like a subgenre of film and even literature where I sort of describe it as like a toxic buddy film, where something
Mm.
like Strangers on a Train is kind of like a good example, or like In Cold Blood, movies in the 70s like Thunderbolt and Lightfoot or Scarecrow. I'm getting maybe kind of deep and obscure depending on how big a cinephile your audience is, but films like that I really like, and just I like the idea, sort of the setup of like two total strangers that just kind of meet by happenstance, and each one of them has a certain thing in their life that's maybe a problem. In this case, it's like they each kind of have their own financial problem, and then yeah, and maybe classic toxic buddy film fashion, they, try to find a solution to their problem and then bad things happen. So I'd had the kind of the setup of the two characters, um, and kind of like generally what was going on in their lives and who they were. And I knew that they were going to meet and there was going to be something, something would bring them together in a toxic way. But then there's also, so that was kind of percolating in my head. And then I learned about it's a true crime incident that happened in New York um, a number of years ago. And I don't want to get too much into that because I don't want
Yeah.
to spoil anything. But, anyways, I learned about this particular case, and I don't know, something about it really kind of was thought provoking for me. And then I was also like, oh, like this would be an interesting thing to combine with this other thing. It kind of fits in certain ways. And so, yeah, then I just kind of combined these, like I said, kind of combined these two ideas and stole some details and some things from this true crime thing that happened. And then then it kind of became its own thing.
Right, right. Yes, because it is mentioned that it is kind of based on a true thing. And
Yeah.
with that, there's, you oftentimes see that in a film, and then you do some research, and the only thing that resembles like the bit is a name or something, or maybe the
Yeah.
place it's set, and you're just like, I mean, you didn't really need the beginning bit because you changed everything. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
exactly. And like, because I'm not trying to flaunt this as like a true story, because it's this as depicted in the film. It's not the real people. It's not the real setting. I'm kind of really just cherry picking details from the true crime thing and some of the dynamics.
yeah.
But it's like Fargo is like a good example where they say in the beginning, this is based on a true story or whatever. And then people found out like it was totally fiction, right? It was like, so, but, this is kind of enough. Like but for people that like true crime, like documentaries, podcasts, you know, Dateline or whatever, um, I think this would definitely be in their wheelhouse.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, with the actual true event, not getting into it, but does the film kind of follow similar beats of how it all turns out and that kind of thing?
Yeah, in terms of like the procedural aspect, it does kind of follow a
Right.
lot of the same trajectory as the real life incident. There's actually um, a friend of mine sent me when we were making it. There's actually another kind of incident, a true, like this kind of thing has actually happened maybe like two or three other times as well. So in a weird way, it's like I sort of focused on this one incident, but there's actually been a couple other similar instances in real life of this happening. Um, but yeah, I kind of just focused on the one, and it's really just kind of, like I said, I kind of took some details and kind of a lot of the basic trajectory of the procedural aspects of it.
Right. Okay. No, that's really interesting because yeah, you wonder. Um, and I think when you watch it, it is very believable. It's very, and when you've seen those kind of true crime documentaries and everything, if someone had just told you that, you'd be like, "Shut up. No.
Yeah.
No, that's not." And then you watch it, you'd be like, "What?"
Yeah.
So, like, it's not a far-fetched story. And to be honest with you, I'm surprised there's not more incidents of, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me wonder, maybe there are. Maybe it's happened, like, a bunch and we just never hear about it, or it's never,
Mm.
like, uncovered as the thing that it is, but, yeah, like I said, there's, like, actually been a couple other little instances that have come up that I've heard about that I've just been like, "Wow, this is that even that feels too common."
Yeah. Yeah. Like, coming back to this script, like, reading it through, what were your thoughts? Like, did you have to change anything? You know, like, did the story still hit you in the same way?
Yeah, I think once I paired, like, the character stuff that I had already had in mind with some of the details of the real life thing, like I said, it sort of, like, became its own thing, and then it was just a lot of it was just kind of about being true to the characters, and I guess the central character of, you know, going through this process with this person. It's like he's just the type of guy that's going to um he's going to maintain a certain attitude. Uh and so then kind of knowing the characters well enough, kind of it's almost like you're just kind of following the character, like the character is its own thing and you're just kind of following it through, um to the end.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Man, when I watched this film, right, the beginning, I went in not knowing anything. I like to have a blank slate, as it were. So I went in not knowing anything. And I found the beginning very, like, you think it's gonna be something completely different, because tonally it starts off completely different.
Yeah.
Right? So when you start to get to certain bits, you're like, yo, like, what is happening right now? Like, was that a conscious effort to do it, or did it just kind of that's how it kind of worked out in the edit? It just kind of, felt like that's the way to tell this story.
No, I mean, definitely just from a writing stage and from just, like, conceiving the movie, that was definitely a goal of mine, was to just, kind of have some shifts and ideally have the audience really not know where this thing is going. I mean, those are usually, like, my favorite types of films where, you know, you don't know everything that's going to happen in the movie in the first 5 minutes, which I feel like
Mm,
so many movies are. And even before you go into the movie, if you've seen a trailer or if you've read anything, so many trailers just give everything away. That, I definitely, I wanted to make a movie that, as an audience member, I would appreciate, which is like you kind of were talking about, where it kind of starts as one thing and then it starts kind of shifting and going someplace else. And hopefully, as an audience member, you don't see everything coming, and you can kind of go with the flow of the movie and the shifts and kind of go along with the ride.
yeah, I definitely like something where I have no clue, right? I
Yeah.
have no clue what is going on. I remember watching like Memento
Hmm.
and thinking, man, poor Guy Pearce. His character just it's not catching it. And by the end, you're like, what a piece of shit. Oh my god, this guy, right? And it's just, usual suspects. Again, you're
Hmm.
watching that film and you just have no clue, and then all of a sudden you're just like, oh shit, right? And that's a great type of film. There's this always, yeah, it's always frustrating when you watch it and you're like, oh, so he's gonna get together with that person, then they're gonna do this. Oh, we're gonna have, a threat. midway, and then it's all going to get resolved, and they'll be on an
Yeah.
island, and then it ends like that, and you're just like, oh
Yeah, I
god.
mean, like I was saying, it's like that's that thing where it's like so many movies. It's like you know, in the first 5-10 minutes, it's like you get every you know exactly where it's going. You get what the movie is, you know, and yeah, like I think about what it was like, you know, in the 70s or whatever. Like people that you know before the internet and all of that, it's like, you know, imagine the audience, like the first people that went to see something like Deliverance, right?
Mm,
Not knowing what's going to happen and then that happening. Like, I sometimes wonder if it's even possible to have an experience like that as a moviegoer in today's age, because it's almost like audiences feel like they have to learn a bunch about the thing they're going to see before they see it. Um, or something like Alien, you know, when Alien came out, it
oh
was like, you know, nobody had any idea that most people didn't have any idea like that was going to happen, you know, what was going
mm.
to happen. And so like I just kind of like long for that experience, I guess. We're just like, man, you know.
Yeah, it's I get kind of baffled, right? Because you have these studios that will pay for these big name actors, right? The film can't get made unless we have these stars in the film. And then they feel, right, okay, we've got these big actors, but we have to let someone know basically what's happening to get them to come. And it's just like, wait, that's why you paid for the big actors, right? Isn't that why you pay for the big actors, to get people to come? You don't need to lay out the frigging complete story to
Yeah.
entice them, because you paid for the big actors. And even on an indie film where you don't necessarily know these people, right? You
Yeah.
might not know the writer, the director, you might not know anyone involved. If it sounds intriguing, you're like, yeah, yeah, I think I want to see that film. You know what I mean? It's this weird conceit. I think like studios think people are dumb.
Yeah.
Where you have to be spoon fed, and basically, picked up and carried into the cinema, right, to
Yeah.
watch something. And it's just like, no, people will come if a story is compelling, right? And
Yeah.
that's something that I thought was really evident during the pandemic, because they shifted all of those films, because they're like, oh, we can't promote it if, and it's just like, yo, if the story's good, people will come, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
It's a weird situation. Like how, like, you know, how does all of that look to you as a filmmaker? These kind of issues.
Well, uh, I mean, obviously, the industry is very risk averse. So I feel like every choice that's made is to, you know, try and avoid any kind of risk. So um, I guess to them that means we have to lay out everything that's going to happen in this movie so people feel safe, or people feel like you know, they're going to be comfortable knowing what they're going to get into. But I feel like audiences now are like really savvy. I think young people are, because like, you know, everyone is pretty much exposed to some form of digital media, like on their phone and stuff, social media. Like
Mm,
they see, I think young people too, like they understand the cliches. They get the cliche stuff quicker now. They'll, whether it's through like even stuff like memes or just like little clips from movies, or like, you know, super cuts of like things that people make on the internet, can expose cliches faster. Like they can absorb like what's lame and what's a cliche.
yeah.
Like I feel like audiences now are just way savvier. So it's weird to me that like film studios and filmmakers don't take that into account and don't maybe try to, like you said, not feel the need to spoon feed audiences or bang them over the head with what you're trying to do.
Mm. I think that is true, but the thing I do find, right, like if someone comes out, right, if a I don't know, a noted reviewer comes out and says this film is not good, you you oftentimes get a load of people then parroting that opinion,
Yeah.
and they might not even have seen the film, but like, oh yeah, I heard Thingy is terrible. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, who's gonna go? And I watch some of these films sometimes for the podcast, and then I'm just like, I don't know what people are talking about. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Or even if I don't enjoy it, right? I didn't love The Flash. I recently got round to watching The Flash. I didn't love it, but I didn't think it was, uh, as bad as a load of people were saying. I thought, you know what? It There's worse films,
Yeah.
but sometimes people will get on you know, there's this thing where everyone has to agree. And if you
Mhm.
don't agree with a certain person, then you'll get ostracized. So it's just like we're following this person, we're following this view. They said this is bad, so it must be bad.
Yeah.
Which I find odd.
Yeah, and that's kind of been that's been around that sort of group, like that critical group consensus think thing has been, or it's been around for a while. I mean, something like I remember, kind of in my film school days, and even before film school, just reading about film history and learning about it and learning about like Heaven's Gate, right? Heaven's Gate
Mm,
was like the infamous flop that, and obviously there were reasons why it got that reputation, but I also think that like the business end of what happened with that movie spilled over into the critical um assessment of it, which I don't think is
yes.
right. Like it got so much bad press and so much bad coverage about going way over budget and bankrupting a studio, and that's not nothing, but when the film came out, like it was DOA. And when I was young, I was always kind of like, well, what's the no one all the stuff I read about Heaven's Gate, no one actually talks about what the movie's about. No one actually talks about the content of the movie. It's
Yeah.
all just like a joke, the movie became sort of like the butt of a joke. And so like I remember renting it and watching it and was like, it's indulgent, but it's like it's good. Like I like it. It's too long and it has issues, but it's maybe the most like the best looking film visually I've maybe ever seen in terms of like the cinematography and the
Mm.
scenery and stuff like that. And and that has since gotten a little bit of a reevaluation in recent years. I think people have kind of come to appreciate it for some of the actual merits of it as a film, and not just like make fun of it because of how expensive it was to make.
Yeah, films then suddenly they get that cult label, right? It's a cult classic, right? Donnie Darko. Everyone trashed it, and now it's like a cult classic, which
Yeah.
I always find very weird. I always, because yeah, it's just I find look, not every film is going to be for you,
Yeah.
but if you don't like it, which that's fine, but say why.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of people just want to trash something and be like, it's rubbish, don't see it. But it's just like, what? Okay, so what didn't work for you? Because it's always,
Yeah.
I try and look at something and go, you know what? I think the main cast were really good, though I didn't necessarily buy this relationship. I thought the costumes were great. Where it fell down for me was this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I feel other people might have a different opinion, but I think if as long as I break things down in a certain way, that's fine, you know?
Yeah. And it's weird to me, like with critics too, it shouldn't be like like you've, described, where it's like people just decide to gang up on certain movies. It's like that, you know, a lot of film is subjective, right? So like different people like different things. And a lot of times I feel like there's critics where it's like, I don't like, with my friends, for example, like I have certain friends, they're going to like, I know them well enough to know they're going to like certain things
Yes.
more than others. There's things that are more up their alley than others. And they, usually we know when there's an understanding, right? But like I feel like that relationship should exist with critics and audiences. Like so many critics, it's like, I don't know what you're like, I don't know what your taste is. Like, what are
Mm.
like are your favorite movies just like the standard like AFI
Yeah.
top 10? Like, is there no like you people should have like things that maybe don't fit into the critical consensus because that's just kind of what they like.
Mm, mm. Oh, no,
I
for
do
sure.
think of I know there is the British film critic Mark Kermode,
Yes.
who I do think he actually, having listened to him for a long time and kind of been a fan of his, it's like I do appreciate that. I know he does have distinctive tastes, or at least he favors. He's favorable towards like horror and stuff. Like The Exorcist is his favorite film, and so like I know what his taste level is, and I know his personality enough to like, if he dislikes something, that doesn't mean I'm not gonna
Yeah,
dislike it, right? I know
exactly.
where my taste and his taste differ, and his criticism can still be valid even if I don't agree with it. But having that understanding of where the critic is coming from and what their taste is, I think is something that um I is maybe lost. I don't know if it was ever a thing to begin with. There were certainly, when I was young, there were obviously fewer. It was like Time Magazine, Newsweek, and Entertainment Weekly were like the three magazines we got that I always read their reviews and stuff. But in terms of like actually getting to know a critic well enough to know their taste, I mean, I guess there are podcasts and stuff, obviously, where there is a more personal connection. So that maybe is kind of a way where a place where that's maybe changing a little bit.
Yeah. No, it's definitely that thing, right? Because for me, there's films I couldn't get on with, like, and my friends just think I'm crazy because I don't like ET. I don't like ET. I don't like the Goonies. There's
Hmm.
there's a
Okay.
load of supposed classic films that I'm just like, man, I don't get it. Right?
Yeah.
I just don't vibe with that film. It's
Yeah.
it's just not like I'm not that person that's just like, oh, I love, everyone likes I don't know, let's say like Deliverance and Deer Hunter and Raging Bull. I'm not just gonna list those type of films and be like, they're my favorite films. No, like Lord of the Rings, the extended version, mind you. None of that TV bullshit. The extended
Hmm.
version of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, I love those films. I think they're awesome. Like with the Star Wars stuff, Empire and Rogue One, for me, are the best things coming out of that franchise. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I mean, and for me, you know, growing up as a kid, growing up in the 80s, like, which it's like a lot of my generation too, where it's like, if you watch those like Goonies and ET when you're like, it was like those movies were like definitely, the fact that I was exposed to them and they were so kid oriented when I was the same age as the people in
Yeah.
the movie, like that definitely my whole generation that probably affected us in a way, like you're said. But I understand, like, another kind of example that speaks to that too is I remember, my dad was like a big film guy, and he was a big, like, he was actually a big fan of THX 1138 when that movie came out.
Oh, okay.
And he like kind of was like, okay, like he really, because that's a more dystopian, like dark, kind of weird sci-fi movie, a
Mm.
little more hard sci-fi. And yeah, he kind of had a story, or at least talked about when, Star Wars was coming out. He was like super pumped because it was like, oh, this is the guy that did THX 1138. And then he went and it was like, oh, this is for kids, this is like a kids movie. And I can see, but I totally see, as a kid, again, like, I'm not a Star Wars like maniac, I'm not like a super fan, but I like the original movies, and I like Rogue One as well. I kind of agree with you on that. But I can totally see where he's coming from, even though I like the movies. And he, it's not like he hated it or anything, but he was just like a little bit let down, which is probably sounds crazy for people to hear. But, you know, I totally get, like I said, where he's coming from and like what his tastes were and what led to him not sort of like loving Star Wars when it came out.
Oh, for sure. Like sometimes it's a mood thing, right? Because with music, like I really like Arcade Fire. And
Mm-hmm.
when they put out The Suburbs, yo, that album was so good. The album was so freaking good. I loved it, man. I played the album so much. I saw them a few times off the back of that album because I like the early albums as too. I love the early albums, but the Suburbs was just that different level. So then I'm waiting for the next album because I'm just like, yo, I've loved all their albums. What's next? And then they brought out, I think it's Reviver. And I listened to Reviver. I thought it's okay, but I wanted more of the Suburbs. This
Mm-hmm.
ain't the Suburbs, man. Like, what is this? And so I just didn't gel with that album. But now I listen to that album. I really like the album. But at the
Mm-hmm.
time, I'm like, like your dad, I was expecting something along the same lines or not so distant from it.
Yeah.
But then you get something and you're just like, yo, are you related? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on here? So you just kind of like, I'm not sure. I don't know if I like this.
Yeah.
But when you can give yourself that separation, then you can look at it with those fresh eyes and be like, actually, yeah, no, that's I enjoy it. It's good.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it can be with, with movies and stuff too. And with, I guess, with any art, really, sometimes you're just not ready for it, or you're in a different place in your life and what you like, and your taste is different. It's not aligned at that moment with the work. And then later on, maybe you get older or whatever, and you go back to it, like you said, and it's like, oh man, like, no, this is affecting me now.
Mm, yeah. Still hasn't worked though for E.T. and the Goonies.
Yeah, I get that. No, you'd have to, unless you like get somehow do Benjamin Button and go backwards, maybe, and you like, if you age backwards and get to that like 8 to 12 age, then maybe you'd love it. But
Yeah, yeah, very true. So, with like, the films that you've watched and enjoyed, how do you think that has helped shape your voice? Like for what you could then do with something like Handshake.
yeah, I mean, kind of getting back to my parents, like, they were both, they're were very like big film people, like film fans. They wasn't their life, but they had between the two of them, you know, again, kind of before the internet, when I first was getting interested in like films and filmmakers, I could like ask them about a director and they'd be like, oh, like you should watch this movie or they did
Oh,
that movie and stuff like that. And so I feel like their good tastes helped shape my tastes maybe, and at least um yeah, maybe some of my sensibilities in terms of like storytelling. Like I said, I mean, I like films and stories where you don't know everything that's going to happen from the beginning. You know, from the first 5-10 minutes. Like I'm interested. I really like films that, and I think that's where, in my opinion, cinema still has room to evolve. Is um, being able to make a film that can in within the film it can evolve from maybe one thing to another, one maybe not necessarily a full-blown one genre to another genre, but you know, I guess a recent example I would say that kind of comes to mind is like Parasite. I thought did a great job of that, where it kind of starts out as like kind of this quaint domestic like family thing, and then like it just kind of really shifts into a whole, it just kind of shifts into this whole other thing. And to me that's where I feel like cinema has a lot of room to grow, just on a story level, on just being able to have shifts and movements within a single film that aren't so jarring that it feels detached, like it feels like incomplete or like separate films within a film. But it's like this is one thing that, yeah, has a progression or an evolution that maybe you wouldn't expect or wouldn't see coming, but still feels organic.
yes. Yes. Like when that happens in a film, it's great. I remember watching Us,
Mm-hmm.
and yo, where that film went was crazy. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. But I think on what we talked about earlier, right, with trailers and something, because once I've watched something, I review it, and so I'm getting all the the trailer together for the website and all of this. So I found the trailer and I just let it play, and I was just like, yo, if I had watched this trailer before the film, I feel it would have led me to in some directions which would have kind of diminished some of the elements of the film, which I thought was insane. I was just like, why would you? Because they showed the mirror bit and then something would have, and I'm just like, no, that's too much. That's too
Yeah.
much. But
Yeah.
I loved where that film went, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I liked I actually liked Nope more than like the more I kind of think about that movie, the more like for a big movie like that, it to be as weird as it was, I guess, like, and to have like, you know, the thing with the ape or whatever, like the children's TV show, and the ape,
Oh
like
yeah.
the monkey or whatever, like that was weird, and it kind of didn't really it didn't like directly correlate with the bigger story, but I still
No.
like that it was like something about that. I still like that, like it was just that weird and kind of almost random and out there to still be in this movie that's like a huge like $100 million movie. Um, yeah, I thought that was the more that kind of like lingered with me, the more I kind of appreciated that movie. But
Mm. Yeah.
just a random aside, since we were
Yeah.
talking.
No, 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 no. No, that's always good, man. That's always good. Right? Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, and I just like a film that will take a chance.
Yeah,
Like a film that will take a chance. But I think it can be difficult, right? And for you, it's trying to get that financing to make something. Like, do you think that can hold you back from taking, certain swings and trying to do certain things?
I mean, if you have like a script that has like a huge like a scale, like a bunch of space travel and different planets and like explosions and stuff, like obviously, you know, it's hard to do bigger scale things like that on like a small budget. But I think most like driven, motivated filmmakers will find a way to make something something that they like and that they're passionate about with what they have. Um, I think that's almost, to me, that's almost it might be the best measure of how good a filmmaker is being able to do the most with the least amount of money and resources.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's very, very telling. I remember watching Monster and just being blown away. Like, there's, finding out there's, the big thing was it was made on a Mac, right? It was made on a
Mhm.
Mac and all of this. And like you don't really see the monster, which is awesome. Like, I think that really helped build that suspense, right? You just kind of saw shadows and things like that. But it was just like what was able to be done with kind of a walk and talk film
Mhm.
was fantastic. So and then you get things like the creator from him. So it's just, yeah, those different scales, like what someone can do with nothing
Yeah.
compared to what they could do with like a huge budget is
Yeah.
always interesting.
One thing too, getting back to the trailer thing, I feel like I remember reading something. I think it was when uh, I think it was for Gone Girl, when David Fincher was releasing Gone Girl. I feel like I read something like a quote from him where he was like, and I may be totally off paraphrasing this, and this may be a total misattribution, but I feel like I remember him saying, yeah, like for the trailer for this movie, I had it in my contract that they couldn't show anything that happens after the first act of the movie. The trailer had to be only stuff from the first act of the movie. And like that, I thought that was awesome. And I feel like I also like, why do trailers have to be 2.5
Mm,
minutes? It's like, why is that a standard that's been agreed upon? Why is it that length? Why can't it be 50 seconds?
yeah.
Like I would love to know why. I mean, especially now, and this is a whole other thing I could gripe and complain about and feel like an old man, but like, you know, when you go to a movie now, it's like, when I was a kid or whatever, you maybe have like 3 or 4 trailers and then the movie starts, and now it's 30 minutes.
Oh,
You
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
if you get there, even I went and saw Dune 2 in IMAX, and it started at 11. 11 was like the start time, and you get to the theater early, they're playing commercials or they're doing the whatever, already. But then when 11 o'clock hit, there was like 15 minutes of just TV ads,
Yes.
just television ads. And I almost walked out too. And plus, it's like IMAX, so you're supposed to be paying extra for the premium ticket in the screen or whatever. And I almost walked out and complained and like asked for my money back, but like I toughed it out. But then like you have those, and then you have the trail, and then you have trailers after that. And I mean, maybe people really like that experience. It's almost a deterrent for me anymore. Like if the movie just started at a reasonable time, like I would be fine with that. But 30 minutes, sometimes it's for like an art film or something. You go and it's like 30 minutes of like superhero movie trailers in front of like an art movie, and you're just like, what are we doing here? Like, but again,
It,
like why 2.5 minutes? Like, why that length? Who has decided that that's the best length? Do theaters like that length? Do film studios and distributors like that length? I don't know why. Like, make them shorter and give away less and let us get to the movie sooner. Like,
it's it's very odd, right? Because I think there was, back in the day, there was no set time for a trailer, you know, but
the trailer
then
for
all of
Alien, the original trailer for Alien, I was sorry to interrupt you, but
no, no,
like
no.
that's like one of the best trailers maybe ever for me, because it really doesn't give anything. It doesn't really give much away. It's just kind of that alarm blaring, and you see some of the crazy imagery, and I think that's only like 50 seconds,
Mm.
and like that's all you need. Like, but anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, no, no. I think the trailer should be as long as you need to get a message across, right? There shouldn't be a fixed time, right?
Yeah,
If your film, yeah, is like this disaster thing, again, you might just want to show a few explosions and then a time clicking down or something, and you'd be like, find out on date, boom, done. Right?
yeah,
If it's more of a period piece and you want to put in a monologue or something, fine, it might run a little bit longer, but it shouldn't necessarily have to be, what I mean, two and
yeah.
a
Like,
half.
why is that a requirement? You're imposing a requirement on every single movie that's made, and maybe some movies have enough material to fill out a 2.5 minute trailer, but like a lot of them don't, and that's why you see the whole movie in the trailer. Probably is because they're like, we don't know what else to put in here. Like, um,
I
but
think I remember finding out, right? It was I, no, I think I knew before, but I remember the original David Ayer Suicide Squad,
mhm.
where the trailer came out and kind of sold the film as being something completely different to what it was. And then you find out David Ayer didn't even cut that trailer, right?
Yeah,
That it was a different an agency cut the trailer. They hadn't even seen the film,
yeah,
right? How the fuck are you giving people the job of cutting a trailer? They've got no attachment to the actual shooting of the film. They what I mean? They don't know what the film is. So they're cutting something that looks like one thing, and then the film's something different. Like, that's ridiculous. So
yeah,
I do think, with Fincher being like only the first, segment of the film can be in it, that shit makes sense,
yeah.
right? I think you need to give the director full control over the over the trailer,
Or
and it should
or
just be
even just
short.
some, yeah, or even just some input, just some, maybe I think they probably wouldn't give that kind of power to very many directors other than someone like
True.
of, David Fincher's status. But I do think also a couple of like recent Clint Eastwood movies have done some interesting things with the trailer. I think it was like American Sniper, where it was just like a scene, like a really intense scene was like
Mm,
most of the trailer. And I think when that Richard Jewell movie came out too, like I think they sort of built the trailer around like that. There was like a lie detector scene where John Hamm is like asking him. And like, if it has to be 2.5 minutes, I think that's a more effective way to use that time instead of just like showing every beat that happens in the movie of just like,
yeah.
here's just like a little excerpt of that can kind of like clue you in onto the movie as a whole, and also maybe be intense or whatever. But It's definitely a problem. I think we need to find a way to solve this. This
Mm.
2.5 minute long
Oh,
trailer issue.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Is it so frustrating? So frustrating. Like the synopsis as well. Sometimes the synopsis is you read it and you be like, that's not what that film is. Like, what who wrote that? What's happening here?
I do also stay away. A lot of times I will even avoid reviews because I think a lot of like you look at some reviews and they just describe every beat that happens in the movie too, and it's like, and some of them are like so long. I just like, I don't like, I just kind of skip to the bottom and just read the last sentence sometimes because I don't want to know too much. I just, but some are better than others for sure. But but sometimes it's like, man, you're literally just going through every single beat of the movie. You're just describing
Mm,
this review, which I don't think should do. But
no, no, that's always just a crazy, yeah, crazy thing when that happens. Like with Handshake, like who wrote the synopsis for that? And how much,
um,
like, input did you have if it wasn't yourself?
yeah, I mean, I pretty much did the like log line, just the one sentence, and then there's varying synopses, I guess, varying length ones. So some of
Mm,
them, there's like a certain number of words, and then sometimes they want longer ones. I think I wrote most of any ones that you might have seen. I probably wrote, but it's like, again, it's like a fine line of like, I would prefer to not write a super long synopsis. Like I would prefer to just be like the one or two sentences.
yeah, because I think the one on, IMBD is super short, and it's just like 2 strangers meet and something, and that's basically it, and it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, I think that's that gives you an essence of what it is. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, when you were putting this together, like, were you always going to be, like, one of the stars of the film? Like, or did that come later on that you thought, "Actually, yeah, I'll just be in it?"
When I originally conceived and wrote it, like I said, I wasn't really thinking of it in terms of something that I would want to or be acting in. Um, but as things kind of started to come together, again, when you're kind of at the level I've been at, in I'm looking to sort of like self-finance a feature film, and it sort of revolves around one principal character. It's like, do I know and do I have any relationships established with any actors in this age group that I can count on to A, just be able to show up every day,
Mm,
and B, to be good enough and to get to know the character as well as I feel like I know. And so there's kind of like a tipping point where it was like, well, at this point, I'm not going to be able to find anyone that's going to know this character better than me. And I know I'm going to be able to count on myself to be there every single day and not just like disappear halfway through. Stuff like that can happen, not just with actors, but with other people, other crew members. So like, I don't. Yeah, I haven't established enough of a core group of collaborators. I have people that I've collaborated with, but when it's a feature film and when it's like I said for this particular role, you're taking a chance. If it's someone that I'm working with, do I cast someone that I've never worked with before to be the centerpiece of a movie? Can I
mm.
trust that as an investment, right? And as just creatively too, like, can I trust that this person is going to be able to get this? and be good. So, I mean, I've acted in other things before, and like I said, there was just kind of a tipping point where I was just like, I think I can. I need to. I think I at this point I would be the best person to be able to do this.
Right. And then how did the rest of the cast fall, fall into place? Was that a long process?
Um, it was it wasn't too long. The other principal actor, he was the hardest person to cast. Um, but most of the actors that are in the movie, I was familiar with from other projects that I'd seen them in, like local films and theater, and
Mm.
so and just kind of in the general local film community, I'd seen their work, and it's like, okay, that person might be good for this role. And but the other main lead actor, yeah, I ended up kind of getting him, and I got pretty lucky because I think he did a really great job. But he's a local theater actor. His name's Joe Basso. He lives here in Las Vegas, and we have a mutual friend um, that had sort of I'd seen him promoting him, like his theater work and stuff. Our mutual friend. So I was like, oh, who's this? And then yeah, I saw him in a play and was like, yeah, he's good. Like, so I reached out to him. I was, I'd had like one other guy that was maybe going to be in that role, who it was like maybe a month out from shooting, maybe less than that, and it was like, all right, well, I got to find somebody like, now.
Yeah.
So I'll settle for this guy if I have to. But then Joe came and he was really good, and he was definitely better and more ideal for the role. And it ended up really, really working out. So yeah, there was like most of the actors I knew and just kind of approached. We did have a casting call for a few people, but a lot of them, like a lot of like day player type people, I've got like through recommendations and stuff, and they ended up really working out as well too. So yeah, definitely got lucky with the casting.
Yeah, I really thought that everyone involved really, gave some great performances. Like Joe was, man, Joe was really good as Bill. Like
Yeah,
you really did buy that character. And it was an interesting foil to Devon because you could see Bill picking up on things, right? And then going, hmm. And so taking things in certain directions,
yeah,
right? Which you thought was like super interesting. And also at the point, you're still not quite sure exactly where it's going.
yeah,
So it's like, yeah, that chemistry was very interesting. And then you've got Erica, like your girlfriend, Mabel did like was great. Like
yeah.
there's a good rapport. You buy you guys as being, that couple you've been together for a while, right? So
Mhm.
you've fallen into these patterns, these understandings, just with the stupid jokes and
Mhm.
comments and all of that. That really worked. And a lot of times you'll watch something and you'll think, no, this is decent. I don't buy them as a couple though, right?
Yeah,
They don't the vibe is weird. I don't
yeah.
buy that. So I thought the relationships in this film really worked well. Like how how easy was it to kind of navigate that? Did you use certain tools like film references, music? Like what was the process for you to embed those things?
Mostly it was just about how relationships trying to present a relationship how it is kind of in real life, right? Because like you said, we see the like movie couples, and it just feels like it's a movie. It's like in quotes, right? It doesn't feel like real. And so, not necessarily maybe references, but maybe just like, you know, having seen so many movies where it just doesn't feel like, yeah, it feels like movie couples, there's too much emphasis on the wrong things, whereas I feel like the best way to present their relationship is to kind of show maybe the interactions that most movies don't show, like you
Mm.
said, like the kind of the jokes, maybe the passive aggressive like things, um just that, that stuff is more interesting and it's more fun to watch and more like entertaining to me as well too, like, when couples try to make each other laugh, or just like real stuff, not like
Yes.
movie stuff. Um, but yeah, so like a lot of that was just kind of done, like I said, in the conceptual, like, really trying to get that stuff in the script. And then, yeah, just kind of trying to create an environment where that feels comfortable and good.
Yeah, no, yeah, it really works. Like, yeah, I think one of my favorite relationships in film is Jesse and, oh my days, I cannot remember Julie Delphi's name in the Linklaters Before trilogy.
Yeah. So is it Celine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes. I thought that was such an honest and realistic type of relationship, especially when they're like in the second film, where it's just like, oh, remember when we slept together? And she's like, we didn't sleep together. Were you? And, they both got this different
Mhm.
recollection of a thing. And it's just like, yeah, that happens so many times. And you'd be like, oh, I remember when we went and and you got super drunk. I wasn't super drunk. You were the one that was super drunk. What the fuck are you
Yeah.
talking about? So it's nice when you see that. And I think, yeah, you really got those you really got those relationships really well.
Yeah,
But I
and
think,
also, like, I think the more detailed things can be, the more realistic they can feel and the more natural they can feel, like, you know, so yeah, I just try and be, like, really detailed with the interactions and with the things that they're saying, and not just be kind of broad and generic.
mm, yeah, I think the film kind of goes really psychological. Do you find like towards the end, well, not even like towards the end, but you hit this certain point and we start dealing with these kind of topics and themes which are super interesting, and I think it really is magnified with Megan when she's talking about situations, and you really, I think what's interesting is when certain things happen, people want to go, I didn't miss anything. So that didn't happen, right? They want to try and cover themselves for that emotional relief. And so I thought her recollection, reco, recollection, recol,
Recollection?
yes.
Ah,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, her recollection of what
mm,
happened was really interesting. It was just all of that kind of back and forth and everything, and then what we saw, as I said, the situation between Bill and Devon at the beginning. You have these interesting dynamics and conversations that really, I think it makes you think, right? It makes you think, like, what would you do in that situation, and how would you then cope with what happens and the fallout and everything like that, which as I said, in those opening scenes with
Mhm.
Evan and everything, you don't think that's what you're gonna get.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I kind of said too, kind of said before, there's just like that, again, that evolution of, the movie as a whole, and then also how like the character is evolving too as the movie kind of evolves, and the things that happen affect him, and also the way time works in the movie as well, the way the passage of time, like you said in the beginning, time moves at one, we're presenting a more condensed period of time, and then it's sort of time becomes kind of like a little bit staggered, and um, it, and yeah, that's a thing in film that I think is interesting too, is the way time is presented in movies, or sometimes the way a filmmaker may choose to present the passage of time. Um, yeah, that's something I think about a lot too. Um, is how, what kind of time period are you presenting? Is this condensed? Like the first feature film I did took place over the course of a day, sort of
Right.
like After Hours or American Graffiti or something like
Yeah.
that. um, but again, I think that's I think cinema can evolve. That's another area where cinema can kind of evolve potentially, like I said, not only in terms of like a story evolving over the course of its runtime, but also how time is maybe presented, and how time can be, yeah, whether it's linear, whether it becomes non-linear, whether it becomes more choppy, or whether you're going back and forth in time versus doing a linear story. Um, yeah, I think those are areas that I think about sometimes in terms of like what might feel new.
Mm. I think sometimes time can really hurt a film, right? Because when you watch the events and you just be like, wait, all of this happens within this period? That doesn't really make any sense. Wait, how do you get from that to that in that?
Yeah.
I remember, was it, I think, in Coming to America 2,
Didn't
which
see it, but
you didn't miss any.
yeah,
I wish
I
I could
heard
get
it
that
was.
time back. I wish. But like there was so many trips from the country they're in, that made up country, to America
Mhm.
and then back again. And you're like, wait, hold on. Because I think they mention how long the flight is. And you're just like, wait, that's not possible. How can you do that concept? What is happening here? And so you're just like, huh? And then you have the times when you're meant to have this big time jump or something, but the characters look the same.
Yeah.
And I think you look a lot different at the end of the film, which I thought was great. I thought that was handled really well. Like what, yeah, what did you, was that all, natural, or was there like hair and
Yeah,
makeup?
there was a little bit of makeup stuff added for sure. Um, yeah, but yeah, again, without like getting
Mm,
too much into what happens, but yeah, there was some makeup stuff and some application stuff, but yeah.
yeah, I thought that was yeah, really good. I thought that element worked very well, like the whole time situation kind of thing. Like because of the gap between the first film and then this one. And as you said, when you first with the first film, like streaming had just kind of started to creep out of the cocoon. So with the huge jumps which we've really had with technology, right? How was that to navigate? And you've made short films in between, obviously, but how was that navigating with this new film, and how much did it benefit from being able to do more stuff technically on probably like maybe a smaller budget?
Um, in terms of technology, like definitely, like I said, I mean, the first feature I did, it was back when, we shot on film. Not that you couldn't shoot digital, but digital did not look good back then. Like it was like, mini DV sort of quality. I think that was right before Michael Mann started using that Viper film stream, whatever that first digital thing was that he shot like Collateral on,
Mm,
um, which, that movie still looks pretty,
yeah.
digitally, so yeah, I mean, obviously the digital technology has gotten a lot better. I would still, if I and it's not that much more expensive, really, when you break it down to shoot on film versus on digital. It just depends. It depends on other factors too. Like, we talk about David Fincher who shoots on digital, but he shoots so many takes, right? That what you're making up for in saved film costs and film prints, you're more than making up for that cost by just taking 2 days to shoot something instead of like one day if you're
Mm,
only like a 1 or 2 take person like Clint Eastwood or something like that. So like, you know, you can sort of, there's a lot of different ways to look at the expense of shooting on film. I mean, I think if you're mindful, it's really not that much more expensive. It's a little, there's extra workflow that goes into it for sure. Um, I still like the look of film. If I could, I would shoot everything you know, on film. But for this particular film, yeah, I mean, we shot it on an Arri Alexa Mini, and we had some. There's like these vintage rehoused anamorphic lenses that like gave it a really nice look. That that looked pretty close to film in a lot of ways, like film texture for me. So, but shooting on digital definitely has its advantages, and the camera is definitely not having to load 1,000-foot magazines and stuff like that. It's definitely there's definitely things that are easier about it, but and make it kind of more viable to shoot, I guess, certain things like mounted onto a car and stuff like that. I mean, there's things that, the technology now has made things easier for sure. But yeah, I mean, like I said, yeah, there was definitely a quite a big difference between the first feature film and this film.
right. How many days did this take to shoot?
We did 18 days.
Okay.
So we did basically 3 weeks in a row. It's like 6-day weeks. And then we did do like maybe 4 days of like pickups a couple months later.
Right. And with the editing process, because you edit the film, like you wear a lot of hats in this film, right?
Yeah.
Which yeah, how was that? And do you think you benefit with that knowledge and then doing the edit?
Yeah, I mean, I would have preferred to not do the edit, but again, I don't really have like an editor collaborator that I've worked with enough to like that's willing to just do a whole feature for like not much money.
Mm.
Um, so I had, there was one person that was kind of maybe going to do it, and that kind of fell through. And then it was just kind of like, well, I'm just going to have to do it. And that's kind of a thing in film school. You kind of, maybe I was conditioned to that, where it's like, well, you can't really count on anyone to do it but yourself, even if that's not true, and even if that's maybe irrational. Still, there's that feeling where it's like, well, sometimes you just got to do it yourself if you want it to get done. um, but I think I'm slower editing my own material than I would be if it was someone else's movie,
Mm.
which is not really good. But I do, having like written the movie and kind of like acted and directed it as well, I kind of know how the scenes are supposed to be like paced. And also performance is a big thing, like being able to edit and build a performance is it almost its own skill. Like you can be a good editor technically, you can put the things together, but you kind of have to be a good actor in a way, or at least understand acting to be able to build the scenes and have them feel right and paced properly. Um, so in that way, I got to being hands-on with the performances, also my own performance. I get to cut out all the stuff that, I get to make myself look way better than I really was. Barely put together certain, like, where it's like, man, I barely I made something out of this, out of nothing. In terms of, sometimes you're feeling like, man, if only people saw this other stuff that is on the cutting room floor, they would be aghast. But I guess I'm probably enough of a control freak too, where like I said, being able to control the performances and the pacing of the movie and of the scenes and stuff, then it becomes, even though I was slow, it's still taking out kind of a middleman, I guess, if there was another editor. Um, Not that another edit, like a professional, legit, like working Hollywood editor would probably do a way better job than I did. Because they, professional editors understand what I was just talking about how to build performance and all of that, along with like
Yeah.
basic technical editing stuff like continuity and stuff. So, but since I didn't have access to those top pro guys, it was like, well, I just kind of got to just get my hands dirty and kind of get it done. So, it took a while. Like I said, it took kind of longer than it should have. Um, but yeah, I ultimately, like, I'm happy with how it turned out, for sure.
Okay. No, that it's always an interesting thing, I think, when you have a situation like this where someone's like written, directed, stars in, edits. Because I think oftentimes with certain things, like when that one person has done so many elements of it, they can get very protective of the work or the thing they're doing, right? So you think, it could have been cut down a little, it's a bit too long and that scene is a bit baggy. But it's like you can fall in love with the stuff too much and you don't want to what's that term, kill your darlings, as it
Mm-hmm.
were. So the fact that you were able to really kind of boil it down to this finished piece, and watching the film, it's not baggy, right? The pacing is good, it's not baggy. I really did enjoy this film. So there's not yeah, you're not watching it and going, it could have been tighter. So the
That's
fact that
good.
you were able to yeah, do all of these different components, right? Even though in an ideal world you'd like to hand them off to someone, the fact that you can do them, I mean, that's that's impressive, my friend. That's impressive. You have to be happy with how this turned out.
Yeah, you definitely, like you said, you kind of can't be precious about, if something's not working, you have to be willing to kind of try and be objective and just get rid of it if it's not working. Like, yeah, because as an editor too, like in my working life, I'm definitely, there's times where I'm just like, I'll be watching something and it's like, well, let's go, like I'm kind of my own audience or my own most critical audience member with my own stuff too. Is like, I don't want it to be boring. I don't want it to be slow. Um, that's as an audience member, I don't like feeling that. And I don't want someone else to feel like that when they're watching something that I've done.
Mm. No, no, you don't. Yeah, I think with this film, it's just, yeah, you're intrigued from the beginning, and then it goes places where this type of film doesn't go. Right? Like when you've watched, there's been things like was it The Woman in the Window Across the Street of something? There was that Netflix film with
Oh
Chris
yeah,
Bell.
I didn't see
And
that, but
yeah, I mean, it was fine, but it just the ending is always preposterous, right? You're just like, "Wait, what?" Oh,
excuse
bless
me.
you.
Sorry.
But no, 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 it's cool, right? Like, they end in a way where you're just like, "What? Huh? Like, what's that? That's not realistic. That wouldn't happen." Or, "Oh, isn't that convenient, right? That this person just turns up and does this thing and blah blah." So with with Handshake, it goes to these places that you don't usually see. And we get this ending, which is really compelling, and you're just like, yeah, that feels right, right? It
Mhm.
feels right that we're here,
Yeah,
which is a
and
good thing.
again, like it's kind of like I was talking about earlier with, there's like the movie couples, and then there's like how people are in real life, and I feel that way with like sometimes movies feel the need to do something that's like a very movie ending where
Mm,
it has to have a twist because it's a movie, and it's like, well,
yeah.
I mean, what there's kind of a balance between satisfying things that you want when you go and see a movie, and then also having some plausibility and logic and feeling real too, or at least for the movie having a being true to whatever that world is, I guess, having a satisfying ending or whatever. So yeah, there's I think a lot of movies that get made now, it's like this it feels like I'm watching the first draft of the script. It's like, how does it
Mm,
get all the way to this point? It's gone through all the writing, they've gone through production, like it probably went through a huge development process in the script stage. How has it gotten to the final product where I'm watching it as an audience member and like it's just full of plot holes and obvious things that don't work and don't make sense, and you just go like, does no one like read or care about what was in the script? But I'm starting to kind of probably rant like an old man again, but those are
no.
things definitely that as an audience member, like I want, I think about. And so when I'm making something, I feel like I said, I'm almost like, I want to be like my most critical audience member, being like, I'm kind of like logic and plausibility police is kind of what I feel like I am a lot of the time.
No, I think it's good to hear you say these things, right? Because as we were talking earlier about not really knowing who a reviewer is. So like,
Mhm.
what are their tastes? What do they like, right?
Yeah.
So how can I trust you? I
Yeah.
think it's that with directors and writers, because
Hmm.
sometimes you don't know, what do you like to ingest, right? What's the type of film you enjoy? Because it's you can watch a film, and as you said, you're just like, was this your first one? Did you write this in a day? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Right? I watched a film the other day, a Netflix film, Irish Wish, and it's just one of those Hollywood rom-coms which make no sense, and it's meant to be about love, but you're just like, no, this is really about, you know, jealousy because you hate your friend, right? The way people act is just like, wait, you're not friends, because a friend doesn't act like that. Like, what?
Yeah.
This makes no sense. Like, none of this makes sense, you know? So
Yeah.
it's when you hear someone talk like yourself and being like, no, I like this, I think these things should happen and I want this to be in the film and these emotions, it lets people know what you like. So then they can go, oh, yeah, I'll watch his film because he sees things the same way as I see things,
Yeah.
right? He's got those sensibilities that I have and I want out of a film. So I think it's always good to hear that kind of stuff, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the film is going to drop, right? The film's
Mhm.
going to drop on Friday, the 29th, right? But it's been out in the festivals. You've won
Mhm.
awards, won a lot
Mhm.
of awards. Like, so you finished the film, right? It's all edited and it's ready. No one's seen it yet. Like, what was the feeling like at that point? And then when you that first screening, how did you then feel at the end of that?
Mostly just riddled with anxiety. Especially having edited it and gone through the sound, the sound mix and the score. Like I've just seen it like you know, a million times. But like there is this part of me that's like, because having seen how it was when it was like a rougher cut, watching it now is kind of like, oh man, like this this scene was unwatchable before. The fact that it's like watchable now is like I feel good about that, But but watching my own stuff like is always been hard, and the fact that I'm like acting in it as well. And but really just through the process of making it, you just get so sick of it. Even, I like the movie, but like I'm just so sick of dealing with it and seeing it and stuff. So like that would be like advice I would give to any like young filmmaker or someone who hasn't maybe made a film is like be prepared to hate. Like you better like what you shoot and what you're doing, because you're gonna get sick of it no matter what. So hopefully it's good enough where you like it enough to where like that'll get you through the process of like post production and like editing and then screening it and stuff. But yeah, for me, it's just been like, yeah, I definitely just feel a lot of anxiety, but also, you kind of have to sit with an audience and see how they're reacting to things and if they're laughing in the right places. And there's a feeling that you can get with an audience watching a movie that you can kind of gauge if things are working or not. So that's a good part of it. But yeah, I mean, like I said, we shot it in 2019, so it's been like 5 years now, and so I'm just kind of like, man, I is it finally done yet?
Oh man. But like in that first screening, did you find that people reacted in the way you were hoping for?
Overall, yeah. I think the first screening was with kind of like cast and crew. So you know, you're still getting that, but you're also kind of like, there are people that worked on the movie, so are they really objective about it? So you kind of have to do like a festival one, and some other ones to kind of really get a feel for the audience. But I feel like overall the audiences were pretty engaged with it and definitely reacting to things how I would hope they would.
That's always good. I
Yeah.
spoke to a couple who yeah, Matthew and Tori Butler, and they made this great film called Dagger, Dagr, which is out. Oh, it's out real soon. I think it's the 8th of August. I think it's the 6th in the US, 8th in the UK. Definitely
August or April or
um,
in
April. Yes,
Gotcha.
I said August. Yeah, thank you for picking
Yeah.
up on that. Yeah, 8th. Yeah, 6th and 8th of April. It's a really good film, and they really put a nice spin on found footage. But I remember them saying that when they did the first initial screenings, they're like, if you get a certain reaction by a certain point, if they reacted to a certain bit, well, they knew that was going to be a good screening. You know,
Nice.
they knew
Yeah.
the audience got what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, it can be a bit nerve wracking when you do those first few screenings and everything like that. But winning the awards, that must feel good.
Yeah, it was definitely nice to kind of get recognized. Um, yeah, and also kind of hopefully, helps in, now that we're in the process of sort of like getting it out there, you kind of hope that the award recognition will maybe be give it a little bit extra legitimacy for people to be willing to check it out, if maybe it hadn't had that recognition, it's just like a nice extra thing where it's like, well, if it's just some, again, because like it's a small movie, there's no recognizable actors in it. The challenge is like, why is someone going to watch my movie versus the thousands, tens of thousands of other choices that they have for things to watch, right? um, that's like kind of the whole dilemma now
Mm.
with kind of being an independent, like tiny filmmaker and making these types of movies is, you know without any kind of a recognizable like name. Like I said, I not only are we competing with like other filmmakers that are releasing stuff now, but we're sort of also competing with like all of the best movies that have ever been made in all of cinema because they could
Yeah.
watch, they're available, you could watch something on the Criterion channel or any of these other options. So like hopefully like stuff, little things like, awards for me, it's just like hopefully that'll maybe be a little bit more incentive for someone to like give a chance, take a chance on a smaller movie like this one.
Well, there is that, you know what I mean? But I think the fact that it's a film that doesn't play that, you know, Hollywood drum, it goes to places that feel real. It's just really well put together, great acting, and just a compelling story. So I think that speaks for itself. So I think people will come to it for that. I think the way you've talked about it today, people are gonna listen to this and they're gonna be like, "Yo, I want to check out Handshake." You know what I
I
mean? I
hope
want to
so too.
see
Yeah.
what I was talking about. So yeah, I think yeah, you've got that, right? And then it's just gonna be that word of mouth. People will be talking about it because
Yeah.
it is that, you know, film that kind of has you thinking. It definitely has you thinking, and especially I thought it's interesting because you have that what happened and the person's kind of opinion of what happened,
Hmm.
which is also really interesting to how it all plays out and everything like that. So yeah, no, the film's great, man. It really worked. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to check it out. I
Oh, for
really
sure.
appreciate.
Yeah, thank you so much for being willing to check it out and to chat with me here today. And yeah, I really appreciate, like I said, if hopefully you can kind of get the word out and maybe generate some interest. And yeah, things like this help a lot. So thank you for doing it.
Hey, it's my pleasure, man. You know, you watch something great, and you want to have these kind of conversations, right? You want to find out, okay, so what went into it, and how did they come up with this story, and like, yo, what So that's always really interesting. So it was great to have this conversation, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Likewise.
Mm. But how can people keep track of what you're doing?
They can follow, I guess on social media, they can follow Handshake Movie, just at Handshake Movie, Facebook and Instagram. That'd probably be the best way to kind of follow the film and then other things that I'm doing as well. They'd be able to kind of like keep track of on there.
Awesome, awesome. So people, the links will be on the website. So make sure you go check it out, follow, so you can see what's happening. And the big thing people will be wondering, what's next, Robert? What's next?
Good question. I mean, like I said, I have a lot of a number of other feature films that I've written. I don't really have anything that's imminently going to be filmed anytime soon. Like I said, I mean, really, this film, it's been like a 5 year process, and that was with COVID thrown in the middle of everything and stuff. So like, you don't ever want a movie to take that long to shoot, and then between shooting and like coming out. But yeah, I think really I'm just gonna kind of like take a break and yeah, maybe see if Handshake can like lead to some other opportunity.
No, I mean, I'm sure it will, right? I think there's a lot of people that talk about doing stuff, right, but don't do it. You know,
Yeah.
like you have people waiting for opportunities, waiting for someone to walk them through every step of the way and spoon feed them. So when someone has gone out, done the thing, right, you now have this finished piece that speaks for itself, right? Doesn't
Yeah.
need stabilizers. It can rock on its own, right? That's a great you know, way to show what you can do, right? And
Yeah.
show you can tell a story. And especially something like this, that, as I said, it doesn't follow those usual beats, right? It takes us to places we don't often go. So if you're a major studio, right, and you want to reboot something, you want to tell a new story, right, but you're just like, everyone's trying to be the austerity thing at the moment, cutting budgets and things like that. So they're looking for, you know, directors and writers who can do the thing. Like when you think about like Marvel, when they rebooted Spider-Man, right? They got Matthew Webb, I want to say. Think it's Matthew Webb.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Andrew Garfield ones. Yeah.
no, no, the Tom Holland ones.
Okay, that was is it Wells?
What was
The director, he did a movie called Cop Car,
yeah.
which was like a kind of a low budget crime movie with Kevin
Mm,
Bacon, and then that got him the new Spider-Man stuff. Yeah.
yeah, which is they're so good. Like they are so I really enjoyed those films, but he came from the indie scene.
Yeah.
Right? And so you tell a great indie story that could take you so many places. So I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing where you go with the career because, as I said, I really enjoyed this. It's one of those films like Memento, like Usual Suspects, that just you don't see coming. So it's great, and yeah, I just think you've really, it's all about show and prove, man, and you've done that. So it's going to be interesting to see the opportunities that come your way, right? The financing, that hopefully now, like, this is a great thing that will just help you get that money to make the films you want to make. So hey, I'm on board. I'm on board to see, and hopefully when you've got a new project, you'll come by for another conversation, man.
Yeah, I hope to get something going again at some point, Hopefully I'm not totally broken by this movie forever. But yeah, I mean I would yeah, I would definitely love to come back. Hopefully I get a little springboard, maybe some other, maybe this will lead to one of the many other sort of feature film projects I would like to do. So yeah, we'll definitely see. But again, thank you so much for your very generous words and for even checking it out and taking the time to talk to me about it.
Hey, no worries, man. As I said, like, if AJ sends me something, I know it's gonna be good, and she hasn't let me down yet. And
Nice.
we've been rocking for a few years now. So, hey, I knew this was gonna be something, and it really, really was. But when you are, shooting the next Spider-Man or something like that, don't forget me, man.
I won't
Come
forget
by
the
for that
little people. Just joking.
conversation.
Yeah. No, for sure,
Outstanding.
man. I'd definitely love to come back. Yeah, it was definitely a good conversation. I feel like we have a lot of the similar opinions, I think.
Yes, indeed, indeed. But people, mark it down on the calendar. The 29th of March is when you will be able to pick up Handshake on all those VODs, right? It will
Yeah,
be out
I think
everywhere.
all the traditional on-demand places, Amazon, I think like iTunes, Google Play, whatever your preferred portal is.
Boom. So no excuses not to check it out, people. And as I said, if you like stuff like Memento, if you like stuff Usual Suspects, Gone Girl, those kind of things that make you think, then Handshake is gonna be for you. So, Robert, thank you so much for your time, man. This has been great.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
All right, man. You take it easy, yeah?
All right, you too.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.